Hey, it's Mark Podolsky, the Land Geek, with your favorite niche real estate website, thelandgeek.com. And on this week's Art of Passive Income podcast, I've got a treat. My guest today is Allen Lomax, and Dr. Allen Lomax, and he is the CEO and investor relations manager of Steed Talker Capital, a multifamily real estate investment firm committed to enhancing the quality of life for communities and investors. He's been doing this for quite a long time and has an incredible story. So, Allen Lomax, welcome.
So glad to be here, Mark. Thank you for having me.
So, let's talk about Steed Talker for a second. What is going on with you and these horses?
Well, quite a lot. They've been an important part of my life for really the last 15 years. Uh, I've always wanted horses in my life, but it really wasn't until the last 15 years that they got into that I really got into horses, got my own. Started going to what they refer to these days as natural horsemanship clinics, learned a whole lot about being with horses and how I guess you would call, manipulate horses to do what you want them to do from what is called a natural horsemanship perspective. But in actuality, it's not particularly natural for horses, maybe natural for humans, but not necessarily for horses. So anyway, evolved from that and got into to really started working with other people who look at horses as being intelligent beings who have their own ways of looking at the world, and like all of us, like to work as autonomous beings. And so we work with them. I work with them now from that perspective of uh, they uh, they have their own will, they have their own desires, and they have a very unique perspective of looking at the world. And we follow the strict rule of, just like you do when you're dating, no means no. And if a horse is telling you no, there's a good reason for that. And so it is actually uh, a way of respecting the horse in ways that I never learned from natural horsemanship. And from that, have developed the kind of relationship that I've always dreamed of having with horses, which is just a relationship of beings from two different species respecting one another and working together in harmony. And taking those same approaches to working with humans has changed my life and trajectory of essentially everything I do. It's
Yeah,
just a way to work with beings on this planet.
yeah. Let's talk about that approach. Let's rewind the tape and talk about how you got started in multifamily and what you what you like about that that niche, and also we'll bring the horses back into it.
Okay. So I got started in real estate investing back in the 1990s when I was a professor at the University of Guam. And I purchased a vacant lot in Colorado, where I was from, and had a home built there. And I had it built intentionally with what you might call a mother-in-law suite, so that I would have a place to go back to when I was here in the States. And that is turned out to be what they call these days is house hacking, is splitting up houses and generating income from them, while also at the same time being able to utilize those for yourself. Well, that went pretty well, and I moved back to the States, and I essentially continued that process and got into fix and flipping and small mobile home parks. And so how did that all turn into to passive investing with multifamily? I'll try to keep this short here, but in 2008, everything was going well and fine in my profession as well as in my investing career, and I had developed wealth really far beyond what I had ever imagined was even possible. And then 2008 crash hit, and I lost everything. The job that had brought me tremendous fulfillment and satisfaction, and most all of my investment assets. Uh, that was, to say the least, a dark and dreary time. And uh, and even though, well, even though I am supposed to know something about psychology and counseling, I did everything that everyone's not supposed to do, and entered a period of really deep, dark depression, and finally came out of that through granting myself grace and forgiveness, and changing my mindset from a mindset of a fixed mindset that this is the way things are to a mindset of growth, and that looking at challenges as opportunities. And so I got educated where I had not been before in terms of real estate. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. Started looking at all kinds of different alternatives and different ways to go about this, and realized that at my age, I didn't really have the luxury of starting over from scratch. You could say I needed a way to scale, and scale pretty rapidly. And so I came to multifamily, joined some mentor groups, developed an extensive network through my podcast, and my intention was that I was going to work on the active side of multifamily, and I realized really early on that that I didn't want to do that. I'm still in higher education, enjoy it a whole lot, and I've only got so much time and energy, and so I looked at it from the passive side, and developed a capital raising private equity firm, and and in a nutshell, I guess that's it. A lot of details left out of that, but we've only got so much time here, so I don't want to totally take up and dominate it with my story here. So wherever you want to go with this, Mark, just ask and we can go there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm not pouring salt into an old wound, but I would be curious, and I think most listeners, because we all go through something like that. I know I went through it. Mine was really 2010. And, I wouldn't say I lost everything, but it felt like that at the time. And I had a big lifestyle and I lost that lifestyle.
Mhm.
And really, for me, the feeling was that this feeling of never having enough. And I would keep chasing it and like, okay, the more money I made, the more money I'd spent, and I would fill up my life with these things. And I realized, okay, well, this is not enough. And then when it was all gone, I realized, oh my gosh, this is just an internal game. And
Mhm.
I mean, this like years of therapy and coming back that I figured this out, but that there's nothing out there that's really going to bring me any satisfaction. It's really my own internal game. And I'd be
Mhm.
curious if, going through, this dark night of the soul and losing everything, going, from wealth beyond your wildest dreams to losing it and then coming back, what that was for you and what advice you would give someone else.
Well, everybody's different, but my experiences through that time were I mean, there was tremendous depression. There was tremendous amounts of shame, humiliation, and embarrassment. And And so the first thing I had to do was to forgive myself and to grant myself the empathic understanding and unconditional positive regard that I would give a friend or family member who was in the same situation. And and granting that to myself, and then realizing that I guess that all that physical wealth that I had been enjoying and had wrapped myself in was, when I really looked at it, it was a really small and significant aspect of who and what I am. And we'd been talking about horses earlier. I had gotten into horses before 2008, just shortly before that. But it was really through these relationship with horses that I really came to see that every moment is a precious moment, and that to find beauty and joy in the moment uh, is the richest thing that we can ever really give to ourselves. And I spent a lot of time with horses, really in what you would call uh, deep meditation. It was uh, not I wasn't doing anything with the horses, but just being in the presence of horses. And, horses, bless their heart, they don't have all of these human concerns, and they just naturally spend a lot of their time in that present moment. And so they are perfect vehicles for leading us into that place and finding that tranquility in the present moment, no matter what your circumstances may be. And with that, and with additional counseling and coaching and mentoring, um, instead of looking back at all the negatives, instead of looking at all of the things that couldn't be done, I just started looking at the possibilities. And, where we focus our minds is where we go. And in those deep dark times, I mean, it's so easy to look at everything that's wrong, and it takes intentionality and purpose to redirect our minds to look at the possibilities there. Um, like I said, that's me, that's my story. I don't know that that's going to work for everybody, and of course, not everybody has the opportunity to be with horses, but I think probably all of us have an opportunity, even those of us who live in metropolitan areas, can find space in nature to reconnect with nature, and then to reconnect with our authentic selves.
Yeah, no, there's a lot in there to unpack. And since this is the Art of Passive Income podcast, let's shift to the passive income part, because you didn't want to necessarily be the operator and the one finding the deal, but you wanted to help other people, and you created the specialized knowledge, like through mentorship and through doing deals, that you could spot a good operator, and then created this private equity group and would raise this money to then go ahead and deploy that capital with the operator. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. Yes.
So, what is the benefit of the investor to go and work with you directly versus going straight to an operator?
Well, um, well, I guess the long and the short of the story is that if you come to me rather than going to to an operator, um, then you know you're working with a well-vetted, ethical operator whom I've had a relationship with and have developed that relationship over really essentially the last 4 years. That's if you can find that operator. And these are private placement agreements, and they're called private placement agreements because they're private. You can't go out to the stock market and find these offerings. And so that initial step of even finding those operators is an arduous task. What you're going to be told if you go out to any of the sites and you want to invest in as a passive investor in multifamily properties, the first thing they're going to tell you to do is start networking, go to local meetups, put your name out there. Anyone who's gone through that process knows that time consuming, expensive going to all of these different events. And in any one of those events, you may turn up people that are going to be viable for your investing. You may not. So it's a lot of time, effort, energy. I've already done that. So that's the big advantage to that. In fact, that's the biggest advantage of working with me, although my program is a comprehensive mentoring program, and uh, I take people who have never invested passively in multifamily from being totally ignorant to being able to look at an offering memorandum, and from that offering memorandum, look at the private placement agreement, uh, the operating agreement, the subscription agreements, and know exactly what to look for in all of those, because all three of those are the legal documents you'll be signing when you put your money down to invest in that. So I take them from absolutely no knowledge to really understanding what it is. And so they've got my expertise, they've got the network. And just in this last quarter, we closed over 85 million in transactions. We brought 650 new units under management. All of those are delivering to our investors 18+% annual rates of return, with 2 times equity multiplier within 5 years, and 7% plus preferred cash on cash returns distributed on a monthly basis. And so there's a lot to be gained by going through us. Save you time, peace of mind, and knowing that who you're working with are vetted operators who have a stellar reputation in terms of their ethics, and an excellent reputation in that they deliver on what they say that they're going to deliver.
Wow, that's a lot. What I'd be curious, what would be the three biggest red flags you would look for when vetting those PPMs or offering
Uh,
memorandums, subscription agreements? What would raise your alarm bells at looking at either the operator or the deal? And so the listeners could say, oh, okay, well, if I was going to, try to do this, these would be things I'd want. I'd be a better
yeah.
educated investor.
Well, the first thing you would want to do is really to find out if they have a reputation of being ethical operators. And with the internet out there, you can do a lot of internet search, just to find that. Have they been involved in lawsuits? Uh, are there negative comments in various different sites and what have you, where you can track them through podcasts and so on and so forth. So that is certainly what we are going to do. But even further than that, before I work with anybody or even think about working with them, I've had a number of one-on-one conversations with them. And just like we're doing now, we can look one another in the eyes, and I do that with each and every one of these. So that is the first thing I'm going to do, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to actually look at their track record. And an ethical operator is going to be able to open those past records, and I can go through those, and what I'm going to look at is what were their projected returns and what were the actual returns with the completions of those properties. I'm going to look at um, uh, what was their operating agreement, and did they follow that agreement and follow through with it as it was planned, and and essentially, what is the bottom line? Did they deliver what they said they were going to deliver? So those are the things that I would look for, um, and um, just I mean, further in conversations in vetting them and working with them, I want to know that um, they know how to do due diligence. They know how to look into the communities that we're investing in and know whether there's employment growth, whether there's population growth, whether there's income growth in those three areas. How well do they know the areas in which they are investing? I also want to know their projections as opposed to the outcomes are going to tell me whether or not they really know how to do underwriting. And if they know how to do underwriting and they're underwriting conservatively, they almost always are going to come out of those deals performing better than what they had promised that they were going to do. So I want to know that they know that underwriting process, and I want to know that they have a stellar reputation of underwriting conservatively. So I look at really all of those things, um, and I'll and I will want to know how they've worked with property managers, and I can certainly check that out by contacting property managers that they have worked with in the past, and get a really good idea if they really truly know what it is that they're doing in terms of syndication. And we were talking about when I thought that I was going to go into the active side of it. I mean, I'd spent several years. I have a realtor's license. I've done a whole lot of real estate transactions myself, and so all of that transactional basis isn't new to me. But when I was going into multifamily, I learned all of those things I'm just talking to you about: the underwriting process, the procurement processes, um, insurance, lending, all of those things that are necessary in that procurement process. I know how to do them, and I know enough about them that I know I don't want to spend my time doing those. So, just for example, in the last quarter, in closing those $85 million, how many realtors did I talk to?
How many?
Zero. How many how many sellers did I talk to?
Zero.
Zero, exactly. How many contractors to do the due diligence did I talk to? Zero, none of that. How many property managers? Zero. So it's truly passive, and the rewards are immense. So
Yeah, that sounds like a good business model there, for sure.
it's
Now,
working for me. So yeah.
yeah, I'd be curious about. the interest rate environment, as interest rates are going up, I know a lot of multifamily operators really took it
Mhm.
hard because they didn't buy down the rate or they didn't lock
Mhm.
the rate. And
Mhm.
is that a forgivable sin in your world, or is that an unforgivable sin?
It's an it's an unforgivable sin, and thank you for bringing that up because that is an extraordinarily important part of that underwriting process to start with. And an extraordinarily important part of what you just mentioned is getting the lender terms that that can mitigate that risk. Uh, and operators who know what they are doing are are doing fine. Those operators who were purchasing properties in 2020, 21, and 22, and the early parts of 23, who were novices or they just really didn't understand the underwriting process and didn't underwrite conservatively in the first place, and they didn't know how to deal with lenders in order to get the precautions that you had just talked about. They are they are hurting now, and I was just talking to a lender yesterday, and we have been told for the last, oh, I don't know, 9 to 12 months that all of these deals are going to be there because of all of these people who didn't underwrite properly, and they're now underwater because interest rates went up and they had no protection against that. And that just hasn't happened. That just hasn't happened. And he's a lender, and he goes, well, what has happened is that lenders have kicked the can down the road and given extensions to these operators, hoping that these operators can get their heads above water and they won't have to foreclose on him. But he said the likelihood of that happening is rare, to say the least. And he said that we are going to start seeing those foreclosures come onto the market within the next 3 to 6 months here. And yeah, that's unfortunate for those operators, but you're absolutely right. That is a critical part of underwriting. It's a critical part of putting the deals together. And and why is it an unforgivable sin? Well, you could lose the property. What also happens in these cases is these operators go back to the investors and say, we're in a little bit of trouble here. Can you divvy up some more equity to help us through these times? That dilutes your investment, and like the lenders, you're going to be asking those same questions. If I divvy up this additional equity, are you going to be able to pull this off? And that's always a question.
Wow. Well, given your long track record now in real estate and investing and you know your your relationship with horses and how that sort of colors everything that you do now, what would you say is the Dr. Allen Lomax definition of success?
Well, the I think the definition of success for anyone is to ask yourself, are you living an authentic life? Are you living a life of passion that brings you fulfillment and satisfaction and happiness? And if you can answer yes to those, then I'd say you're an extraordinarily successful person because those aren't easy things to do. Um, and uh, and uh, it's nice to have wealth on financial wealth on top of that. But that's just icing on the cake. It isn't, it's not really an authentic life. It's not really a life of fulfillment and passion.
I love it. I love it. Well, your mentorship has been invaluable. We're now at that point in the podcast where I'm going to ask you for your tip of the week, a website, a resource, a book, something else actionable for the Art of Passive Income listeners to go improve their businesses, improve their lives. But before you do that, I have to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is Flight School. Learn how the next 16 weeks can transform your life by creating a passive income out of any renters, rehabs, renovations, or rodents. And I know what you're thinking. What about the tuition? It ain't going to cost you nothing, guaranteed. You're going to make it back 180 days or less. Just show us you did the work. Learn more. Go to landgeek.com/training. Schedule a call with one of our land investing experts. Landgeek.com/training. Dr. Allen Lomax, what is your tip of the week?
Well, my tip of the week is that a lot of people listening to this podcast may think that you and I are competitors, but I don't think so. I think that you have a gateway into real estate that I don't have. I'm looking for people who have developed some wealth and they have the ability to take that wealth and that capital to invest passively. Your your land, your flight deck program is a perfect way to do that. It's a perfect way to begin to get into real estate with very little capital and a way to develop it and develop it pretty rapidly. And once you have that mechanism in place, then you are going to need a place to park your capital where your capital's not just sitting idly, but it is working for you. And so I'm the next step on your journey there. So I guess that's one tip. The other is that some people see things as they are and ask why. I see things that have never been and ask why not. And what people can do here, if they want to learn more about what I'm doing, they can get our exclusive high yield investment blueprint, 60 days to 18% returns. And they can find that at highyieldblueprint.com. That's www.highyieldblueprint.com. I look forward to hearing from your viewers and listeners.
Amazing. I will have links to highyieldblueprint.com. And my tip of the week is learn more about Dr. Allen Lomax at steedtalker.com. Steedtalker.com. There's a wealth of information on there as well. And yeah, I agree. We are definitely not competitors. And there's definitely people out there who are accredited investors. They need a place to put their money. And like you said, it's not always obvious where you're going to find the best operators, and to have a trusted source who can vet them, understands the complexities of a multifamily deal is invaluable. And so there's a reason that you're able to raise the money that you're raising and producing the returns that you're producing for your investors and your partners. So go there, steedtalker.com. And if you love horses, there's going to be a lot of horse pictures in there as well. And maybe if you've never heard of the power that equine therapy can give people, check that out as well, because there is something magical about the horse, and it's one of those maybe ineffable types of experiences that you have to actually go and do that words don't really truly convey. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Dr. Lomax. And I want to thank the listeners, remind you, if you're getting value, just do me 3 favors. Follow, rate, review the podcast, send a screenshot of that review, support@delandgeek.com, and I'll send you a signed copy of our newest book, Dirt Rich 2, How to Scale Your Land Business Without Skipping a Beat. as the plot thickens on Dirt Rich too. So please do that. And even if you don't want the book, it just helps me get guests like Dr. Allen Lomax to come on the podcast and even come back, because he'll look at the reviews and be like, okay, this is a legit podcast for me. So just do it for yourself selfishly. All right. Let freedom ring. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Passive Income podcast. Are you ready to learn how you can start building a passive income without renters, rehabs, renovations, or rodents? Schedule a free consultation at thelandgeek.com/training. Let freedom ring.